Okay, so you got to figure out Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. That's what we do. I'm Arif Halaby. That's Jeff Gerard. Safer money means what? It means how do we protect what you've put in so that when the market drops, not if, but when, like a day like today, it's a little nerve-wracking, isn't it? Or you look at your retirement account, you look at your accounts and you go, gosh, almost anything can happen. This is a little scary. Yeah, in fact, it can. Well, there's a way to make things a little bit safer, and partly it comes from understanding the foundation of what the numbers actually mean. So we're going to try to keep it simple here, and that's, I think, pretty important. All right, Jeff, corporate pensions.
Sir.
The top 25 corporate pension plans alone are underfunded by $250 billion, $225 billion. And we have some of those employers right here in town that are just kind of struggling a little bit. Maybe it's something that we kind of need to know about.
Well, and I think it begs the question, say, what does underfunded mean? It really means, people say, okay, does that mean there's no money? Well, no, there's money, but think of it like this. Let's say that you anticipate between now and then the time you retire, you have to amass $1 million. You think you might take out X percentage, let me just say $40,000 a year. So to have $40,000 a year, you need to have X amount. So you have to have this formula, if you will, of how much do I save each year, which breaks down to each month or maybe each paycheck. So you have this path that you're on of saving to get to that number. Well, as Arif was talking about a minute ago, let's say, just as one example, one part of the peril of having a savings plan in a risky place, if the market drops, that's going to create a bit of a gap. You may have to put more in the next month or the next year or whatever have you to get to that number and achieve that. Now, maybe, hey, you've had some great years as well. No doubt that can happen. But at the end of that path, when you reach retirement, if you do not have enough money, what do? Do you say, you know what, I promised myself $40,000 a year and darn it, I'm going to take that money? Well, if you only have $400,000 and not the $1 million, you're going to run out of money a lot sooner than you would had you had that full $1 million in my example. So when you have this type of scenario going on in a pension and you have billions of dollars, that's thousands of millions of dollars, and everyone that's getting closer to retirement is starting to now retire, now there's putting some pressure on there. They have to take money out of that will never go and earn interest again. It's not part of that bucket anymore, which means that now they gave it to somebody under contract. Great, they made a promise, and those people go off and spend that money. They're not going to put money back into that bucket. In fact, no one is on their behalf. So now that's the pressure that's really happening here. So when companies are facing this underfunded status, they have a bucket of dollars. It's just not enough to contribute to pay everybody as promised.
Yeah, let's go. That's a great point, Jeff. The clarity is important. Go to the extreme for a minute. If you say, I need to live on $1,000 a month and I need that to last for the rest of my life, and you have $50,000 in your account and you're 60 years old, how many times can you take out $1,000 before you run out of money?
There you go.
And that's the way the pension system is. There's a big bucket of dollars where the goal is to have the interest and maybe some of the contributions that are coming from the new people, right? We would traditionally call that a Ponzi scheme, where you take the new money coming in to pay the old investors, but that's not what we call the pension system today, even though there are some authors that have made that claim quite clear, that it's an upside down system. But if it was managed properly and if it was realistically paying out, nobody wants to take a pay raise. I get it. Everybody's ticked off. And I have friends that say, hey, that's not cool. And I get it. Okay. And at the end, you're going to hear me say, and 1 + 1 is still 2. It's not cool. They signed the deal. You gave up days off. You gave up this. I'm sorry. Then figure out a way to fix the numbers. And then if the math is there, if the numbers are there, and now they're not being fair or honest, or let's fight, man. Let's fight all the way because it's your rights. But how do we make sure the numbers are there and you're not the one holding the bag, right? In a bank robbery, the guy who runs, that's where the terminology comes. You're the one holding the bag. You're the one that gets all the blame and everything. When you say, but I was 27 years old and they couldn't make changes, so I was supposed to retire at 60 or 55 or 50, tough luck. Right? They had to make changes. When I came on the department, Jeff, it was a 20-year pension. 21 years old, that means 41. You could have retired at 41 years old.
Wow.
Now, back then, that was an old guy. But now it's not old anymore.
Hey, I resemble that remark.
Yeah.
Careful.
Now it's not. I was like, oh, 41, that's so old.
I couldn't imagine retiring right now. That's it.
It's so weird, right? And and at that time, it was 40% of your pay.
Yeah.
So if you're pretty ambitious and could have promoted, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $50,000 a year.
Wow.
And you'd be done. You never have to work again a day in your life. And it goes up every year, a certain amount. Pretty darn good if that
Sounds
were.
great.
Yeah.
If I'm the one getting the check every month for the next 60 years.
And there were a lot of officers through counseling or initiative on their own that would come on, do their time in the streets, and then very quickly get inside and promote inside. And you kind of never really get in, they'd have to get another outfit that was a little bit bigger each time. Their uniform would have to keep growing because they weren't out in the field working out. You would see these folks. They would take time off, and I love the family leave, right? Family leave. For what? Oh, family leave. Okay, family leave. And they still get paid.
To not work?
It's a great gig, man, if you can get it. It's the dodging bullets today that's the problem because they're pretty fast. But there are other pensions out there. And what are these?
Well, you look at some of these right in our backyard. I mean, Boeing, as you mentioned, employs a lot of people. You have things like companies like Lockheed. Who else is in our backyard? We have a lot of Verizon employees here in Southern California, especially right around Santa Clarita, San Fernando Valley, Antelope Valley. FedEx is another big employer too. And this is just to name some that are on the top of this list here.
Well, Jeff, you have Northrop. We have AT&T.
There you go.
Delta Airlines. Some of you are still employed by Delta. Their pension, or at least you have a pension system that they're eligible for. Here, this is exciting. How about Ford or UPS or American Airlines?
American Airlines, yeah.
And recently we had Raytheon, a client come in from Raytheon. A lot of folks, look, you're given options to cash out your pension and to say, okay, I can have, whatever, let's say $4,000 a month, or you can have $726,000. Here's a lump sum of $726 or $4,000 a month. Don't worry, trust us, you will receive that forever. Well, it used to be, sure, man, you just send me my check. Today, a lot of people are opting for that large lump sum withdrawal, and they're saying, goodbye, company. I'll, keep me on the newsletter, but other than that, I'm going to be responsible for my own money. Those folks come to people like us. We take the accounts and we might split it up into 2 or 3 different types of places where they would earn some interest, and they have guarantees, but it's away from the pension system, the stress on that, and creating a way, if you will, where people can end up upside down, at least on the wrong side. Because look, now you're 82 years old, and the pension planned on you dying at 78. Well, that didn't work out. You're 82. And right about then they say, oh, by the way, everybody has to take a 30% pay cut. That means you were making $5,000 a month. Now you make $3,500. How many of you want that deal? And if you don't vote for that deal, like what airlines, Jeff? Remember them?
Oh, that was
Starts with United.
United.
United Airlines. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember United Airlines? We had a pilot
Totally.
come in, and he had to take a 60% pay cut.
Right.
And he's all like, "That's not fair. We signed a contract," and they said, "Yeah, or we go bankrupt." And if we go bankrupt, then it all goes into a bankruptcy judge's hands, and that bankruptcy judge, his job or her job is to decide who gets what. So you could get a lot less, you could get nothing. Heck, you might even get more. So you want to take your chances? So they went from $10,000 a month to $4,000 a month.
Incredible.
You might say, "Oh, that's still a lot of money." Yeah, not if yesterday you were spending $10,000.
Sure.
If tomorrow you're spending $4,000, that's a problem. So that's why we encourage you to understand your pension system.
Well, and a big part of this is to remember that this wasn't designed for you to take out a big bucket of dollars. But if an employer is offering you a buyout, I mean, what you would think, oh, they can afford to pay me $40,000 a year. That's way less pressure than giving me, in Arif's example, $700,000 right up front. How can they afford to do that? Because, we just had a reset in the uniform life tables, which is basically a way of, it's a measure of how long people are living. What did we add? Another 36, over 3.5 years, Arif, I think it was, to the life expectancy, both male and female. And what happens is that means that they're going to have to, on average, pay you out that much longer. So that means another, whatever, take your monthly or your yearly pension, and then multiply that by 3.5, even 4 times in some cases.
Yeah. So here's what was going on. They have a plan. Now, the way insurance, car insurance, life insurance, everything, the way it works is they have a large number of people, cars, things, whatever it is that they're insuring. And they know that statistically speaking, that somebody's going to get in a car accident today. They don't know who, they just know somebody will. So by insuring everybody a little bit, they know that some are really good drivers and they may never crash their car, but they still have to pay insurance. And this person, oh my gosh, this is their third car insurance claim or a car accident in the last 5 years. So that person is going to pay more money, but there still is no way that they're going to pay enough to replace their car. So they use other people's money who never get in a car accident to pay that person. Mm-hmm. Pensions are very similar. There are people that are retired now. There are people that may die. There are people that may never retire. There are people that will get one paycheck and then pass away. So there's all different people in it. But when they have a large enough group, they can pretty much guess how long people are going to live and be taking money out. Until just this year, when it was a 33-month change, just shy of 3 years, meaning you are expected to live, if you're in that bucket, overall, the average, almost 3 years longer than everybody was doing before. So here's the problem. If you're a life insurance company, you're like, yay, we don't have to pay out claims for another 33 months on average. So great. If you're a customer, maybe you want to get new life insurance if today's, because the numbers are going to be less money to insure you today. So that's good news. But if you're on the pension system, and they had a bucket of dollars and they expected to drain those at a particular rate by paying you, but now you're going to be in the system pulling money out for a lot longer. Now they're trying to say, how are we going to do that? So that's why you're going to start seeing a lot of changes over the next 6 to 12 months. You're going to be forced to vote because, Jeff, there's something called the California rule. Are you familiar?
My goodness. Yeah, somewhat. So the California rule is, so here's what it is. If you're talking about a pension, you have a contract, right? We talked about the promise that someone's made. So what's happened is over the years, there have been case law brought into legislature and considered, and actually, which has constituted a big part of this, what's been coined as the California rule. So in some cases, there were individuals that worked for companies and municipalities, cities, for 20 years. And 3 days, 3 minutes, 3 months before they were supposed to retire, in some cases as early as, I think within a month of the time they were supposed to retire, they canceled the pension or drastically reformed it and said, oh, we're not going to give it to you.
And you have seen that in private companies when people are just about ready for that next bump up or whatever it might be. Sometimes they say, oh, we're just going to fire you. Now, I think that's one step away from extremely cruel, but that's the way some of these folks work. Well, there is some legal remedy, and back then, I want to say in the 30s or 40s, 1947,
I think it was.
Yeah, right in the 30s or 40s, there was a law that said you can't do that. If when I am hired, you have a pension system, and that's one of the things that I gave up somewhere else. I gave up this to get that, and I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. The California rule says that's the same system that you have to stay with up until your entire career, or you can make the change, not the city or the county, but you can make the change if you want to. And any change that the city does in the pension system has to be the same or better for you to go over. So in other words, they can say, hey, listen, we were going to let you retire. Here's what they did in our case. Hey, you could retire at 20 years of service at age 41 with 40% of your pay. But if you switch over to this other one and wait till age 50, we're not going to give you 40%. We'll give you 55%. And you go, oh, well, that's a lot more money. And you do the math in your head and you say, that could be $1,000 a month. And plus I came on at 25 anyway, so that's 45. So it's really only a few more years, and plus I'm going to have kids in college, and so I need to save. And okay, so I'll do it, right? So people would do that, and they would make those shifts. Today, there's even another shift that's happening. So for folks that are working, it's up to you if you want to switch the pension system. I would encourage you to check with your financial advisor, check with your CPA if they're giving you offers to make a change, or if they're giving you offers for a cash buyout, because sometimes they will do that. Is it the right thing for you? I don't know. Everybody's a little different and your needs are different. So you need to know what that is.
Well, I can tell you when you're considering or being offered the cash out, the lump sum option, as some people call it, versus the annuity. You'll see two things on your retirement package. You'll say lump sum or annuity. Annuity is just the stream of payments, and then you have some options within that as well. But on that lump sum side, you're free to do what you want with that money. You're not taxed on it because you don't put it in your bank account and then go do what you want with it. You can do that, but I wouldn't suggest it. You'd pay the highest tax bracket in a lot of cases if it's a large enough number. But what folks can do is roll that over into a pre-tax account, preserve the tax status, because remember, this is money that was never given to you during your working years. It was deferred off to the side to be paid out later on. So what happens is you say, hey, I have this tax liability if I cash it out. So how are people cashing out their pensions? Well, what they're doing is rolling that over, similar to if you had a 401k or some other type of retirement plan at work on a pre-tax basis. You roll that over into an individual retirement account, you preserve the taxes, and then as you drip it out, that's when it's subject to taxes. And then wherever you are in the country or the world, that dictates your tax status, what other sources of income you have. So there's a lot of other things that are contributing to that, but a lot of folks are able to preserve that big bucket of dollars because, as Arif was saying in the beginning of the show, if you were to take that annuity pension, or at least I think you said this, if not, we were on the same wavelength here. If you take that pension and you start to take payments out and you die in 10 minutes or 10 years, if you didn't select the right option, let's say you took the highest amount that you possibly could per month with no survival benefits. That means that if you took $5,000 a month in my example, and you took that for 1 month and then you died, that's all they're going to pay out. And that big bucket of dollars that was left behind stays there and no one gets any more money.
And that's the reason that the pension system said it worked, because they expected you to retire at 60 and die at 62. That's the reason Social Security was so good at 65, because you died at 68.
Right.
That was the numbers that they had. Except that's not the case anymore. You're now eating quinoa and kale. You're now walking for lunch. You're not smoking 3 packs of Camels a day. You're not sitting there with eggs and bacon and breakfast, 6 days a week. That's what people used to do, right? They would drink every night and have a big steak and hearty potatoes. And so between the carbs and the cholesterol, nobody even knew what cholesterol was.
Sure.
And that is a change. Today, you have men and women in their 60s and 70s as active as people in their 30s and 40s. You have men and women in their 60s and 70s that look like they're 50. So there's a huge shift, and those folks have to be paid if they had a promise and a pension. And so I'm sharing with you so that you can prepare that not if, but when they reduce your pension. Now, here's what I think they're going to do. In fact, we'll cover it when we come back in just a minute. There's not just one. I think they're going to do all 3 of these things on one layer or another. And truly, it will depend on what the political climate is of the country, who's in office, both on the state and the federal level, and what emergencies or problems that they will use to take advantage, right? Like when things happen in a crisis, often they'll run and try to pass legislation because they use the fear, the scare tactics. So it will depend on that situation when we get really bad, and we'll cover that when we come back. I'm Arif Halaby, Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. That's Jeff Gerard. On your place for news, talk, and information, this is AM 1220 KHTS. Yes. Hey, welcome back to the show, Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby. That's Jeff Gerard. We're talking about your family's finances and pension plan, sometimes the reform that may be coming down the road, because we're seeing a lot of challenges when it comes to the funding, which means the dollars have to be there to make the promises come true. There's a few things that can happen. I think there's going to be one of 3 things at least, most likely 2 or even all 3. Number 1, in order to keep the pension system from going bankrupt, they're going to have to charge the existing employees or the people that fund it. And what I think that's going to be is employees and taxpayers. Because what happens is every year the city, for example, will have a number and it says, okay, well, we're supposed to be, I'm just going to make up numbers here. We're supposed to have $100 billion in this account. Oh, wait, we're short by 75 million. So then the city writes a check for 75 million and brings it up to where it's supposed to be for that year. When there's a negative year, like a bad stock market or huge inflation, and that gap is wider, the city has to write a much larger check, or the county or the state or the government, or you're a company Boeing, Northrop, FedEx, on and on, right? They have to write a check to fill it, depending on whatever contractually they're obligated to do. So those numbers have to come from somewhere. They don't just make money, right? Only the federal government can print money, not the city or the county or your company. And so when those dollars are added into that bucket, as the story goes, things travel downhill, right? So it's the taxpayer that has to pay it. So I think there's going to be, number one, taxes have to increase. And when you tell somebody, oh, by the way, I know you work at a small job and you're working hard, and only 19%, that means 1 out of every 5 workers have a pension. And in order to make that pension work, the other 4 that are working their fanny off, that do not have a pension, that are working part-time, that may have 4 to 5 children, they have to pay higher taxes so that this guy or gal could retire at 50 years old and be in Cabo for the rest of their life. Do you not see a problem with that? Do you not see somebody being ticked off somewhere down the line? I do, especially when somebody comes up. Right now, they've been able to hide some of that corruption, but the email scandal has shown how corrupt at least one of our political parties can be. What do you think is going to happen when the emails and when the public finds out that 4 of you have to work overtime to break even because the taxes have increased? So the water and power guy or gal or Edison has to, right? They increase rates. That's what they're going to do. That's where the dollars come from. All right, that's number one. Number 2, I think what they're going to have to do is reduce benefits. Now, they're going to reduce benefits 1 of 2, maybe 3 different ways. One of the ways they're going to do that is by making you work longer. So instead of age 50, it's going to be 52 or 50, 55. It's the same thing with Social Security, right? We started with Social Security with 65. Today, it's 67, 68 before you can get your full pension. They're going to have to make that age 70. If you're under the age of 45, they need to make it age 70. Just call it a day and see if they can keep it funded for another 50 or 100 years. Other than that, it's touch and go every year. Who knows? Especially with low interest rates. So they need to somehow make benefits. So they're going to give you less money. They're going to make you work longer. That's the 2 things that I think they're going to end up doing to give you less of a benefits. And in addition to that, they're going to say, we were going to give you 70% of your income when you retire. We're now going to give you 65%. Now, if I were king for a day, look, because you're going to only be a day, right? You make a rule and everybody's going to be ticked off and they're going to vote your fanny out and chase you out of town because that's what they do. Even if you're trying to save their life, the only thing you can do is you're going to say, hey guys, you're going to work longer. If you're under this age, you're going to have to work a lot longer. Sorry, but that's the way it goes. The second thing is we're going to have to inflate we'll get to that in a second. The second thing is we're going to have to give you a dollar figure that you could take out, no problem. But if not, you have to work a couple more years. And we're going to reduce your benefit. We're going to reduce your benefit. Sorry. We're going to reduce your benefit. And the third thing is, I just touched on, they're going to have to inflate the currency. Now, the Federal Reserve operates on a 3% inflation. That's their goal. Their target is 2, 2.5, 3, whatever they're trying to talk about every day. It comes out differently. Whenever they're convenient, they're masters of hindsight financial. I don't know if the Fed has ever gotten anything right when it's come to this macroeconomics. No joke. They're always late or early, and maybe that's the nature of it, right? I don't know, but they're just,
sure.
You can't count on them to be accurate. But they have to inflate the currency. So yeah, I'm going to give you $4,000 a month, but it's only going to buy $3,600 worth of goods because we inflated it an extra 10%. Oh, but when I go to the store, it says $4,000. I know, but look at gallon of gas. Look at milk. Look at eggs. Look at your utilities. Look at property tax. Look at car registration tax, right? They're going to have to inflate the currency, which means your pension is not going to increase as much. And I think that's how they're going to reduce the benefits. They're going to cap your increase at 2 or 3%, and they'll inflate the currency at 4, 5, or 6, so that your buying power slowly gets to be eroded. That's my macro, boring economic situation that I think is going to end up the only way to fix this. But Jeff, the California rule, I want you to touch on that again. It only applies to public pensions. It doesn't apply to corporate pensions.
That's right. But what you see is when a a pool of pensions are out there, and they're starting to see these rules being enacted and this legislation come in and reform the pensions. Do you think that that the government pensions may not follow suit? I don't know. I mean, you're starting to see that the California rule, as it was coined, is starting to spread across other states in the union. So does that mean that the other pensions that are out there would not follow suit? I don't know. But when you start to see a math problem, I mean, this is no secret. We've known that pensions have been in trouble for a long time. A lot of them are. I mean, if it were up to me, I would say, look, get rid of the pensions altogether. Stop selling people a promise, because you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, I go back to your example, Arif, when you say, when we talk about college and providing an education or paying for the education of your young person. You have a child and you have little Susie or little Jimmy, and you see their eyes and you say, I'm going to make sure that in 18 years or 19 years, whenever you reach college age, I'm going to send you to the best college. I don't care what it costs. Well, that was one child, and then two children, then three. Then you have, in some people's cases, 4 or 5, multiple children, and then that youngest one or that oldest one gets to college age, and you say, hey, sorry, that was 18 years ago I made that promise to you. The landscape's changed. We've taken on more water. I don't know what else to say. Look, I'll do whatever. Here's this. You can stay with me rent-free as long as you can. Yeah, but Mom, Dad, you said. Yeah, I know. But you promised. I know. And we talked about it, and we touched base all along the way. But the last 5 years, we didn't talk about it at the dinner table because things were going downhill kind of fast, and I didn't know how to say it to you. So what's happened is this great big secret's been kept from all the employees that the promise has changed. Or look, we can only keep the promise for you. Don't tell your younger siblings that they're not going to college. Okay, we're going to pay for yours because we promised, but we didn't promise them. So you start to see this favoritism, these other things happening. So what do these rules really come down to? It levels the playing field for the folks that are entitled to receiving a benefit. And sadly, when they don't telegraph the punch, it comes as a surprise, but someone's known all along when they're looking at the numbers and they're not adding up. When they have to put more money in because there was a market correction or some of the other things that have happened where they had to put more money in. I don't care what it is. If they had to put more dollars, that means they had to separate with that money. That means they couldn't give out pay raises, cost of living increases, whatever have you. So something changes along the way. But I think it's unfair of us to tell someone what's going to happen in 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Yeah, look, if you're a parent, you want the best for your child. But if you tell your child, I'm going to pay for Harvard or Stanford or USC, and you're talking about $60,000, $70,000 a year today, what is that going to be in the future?
Sure.
Especially as education is shifting away from this brick and mortar model and this sabbatical model. And the first 2 years, you never see a professor model, except they get paid because the master's and PhD students are teaching the freshman classes, right? And you got all these people being paid, and for what? If you make it so those college students have to pay right now, they go to work, they get that paycheck, they pay it towards college. Do you think they're not going to be a bit more responsible? I think so. But if you tell somebody who's 19 years old that half of their life that they lived from now, they're going to have to start paying this stuff back, they're like, oh, that seemed like forever ago. I was in junior high. I was in elementary. It doesn't matter to me. Who cares if I have to pay that money back? It's so long, right? When I was 21, 41 seemed like it was forever. That's the same thing, right? If you take an 18 and 19-year-old and say, well, with deferments and your MBA and you're going back to school part-time, you don't have to pay this back until, I don't know, age 30 begin, or 28. That's when you can begin to pay it back. They don't see the value in education because they're borrowing and their mom is paying for it, and it's just, it's a piece of paper, sign here, got it, bye.
Kind of like the furniture store having trouble selling that couch, and then they say no payments for 24 months, and then 2 years later, you get the bill for this old couch. You go, wait a minute, I'm getting ready to replace this thing.
Yes.
So it's a lie. I'm sorry. It's something we shouldn't. I just said it. I'm sorry. It's very damaging that we've grandfathered this way of thinking, and the only people it hurts are the people that are expecting the benefit. Whether you're on the side, on the upside, where you're waiting for it to come and you're taking out, whether it's union dues or contributions, however it works out, or on the back end, when you're supposed to receive that payment. Hey, and if it worked out that your company, which by the way owns that pension, that's an asset of their corporation, their entity. That's not your money. You're entitled to next month's paycheck, not the bucket of dollars, unless they offer it to you and you run with it.
Yeah, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation is kind of the FDIC, if you will, or the insurance company that insures your pension, but it doesn't insure 100% of it. It has a minimum amount, right? There's what's called a deductible, I guess you can call it that, where the company's assets or your pocketbook has to pay the first amount. So you may have a $3,000 a month pension, but by the time it's all said and done, maybe you get $1,900 and you only might get that for 8 months or 2 years, not forever if the pension system goes bankrupt. Ask TWA. TWA was purchased and then liquidated for its pension system. Ask Carl Icahn, right? 30 years ago, that's what he did. Corporate raider Carl Icahn, that's what his nickname was. And he's done that to countless. Ask George Soros how he's gone in to foreign countries, purchased, bankrupted. It's a lot more than I can cover in a few minutes, but understood that he basically took that country's currency. There's a way to manipulate it enough and then basically collapse the currency. And the amount of money that they make, both of these son of a guns, is just enormous on the deal. So be very careful if you're trying to say, oh, I'm going to follow the experts. The experts never lose. They win coming or going, up or down. It's you that has to take care of your own family. It's you that has to realize your retirement is yours. When did it become okay? And this is rhetorical, but definitely something I want you to think about. When did it become okay for you to give up the choices for your health care or your retirement to a company? Some of you don't even like your boss, and you're trusting that company with your health insurance or your retirement. Well, they need to, they have to. Look, guys, I don't think anybody can make a decision for your family better than you. And somewhere along the way, a company that was good at making cars or computers or creating electricity, they went to them and said, and now you got to provide health insurance. They're like, well, I don't even know how to spell health insurance. Oh, it doesn't matter. You have to bring in the experts, and then, oh, well, now you have to do this, and then the regulatory that, and fill out these forms, and okay. And today with Obamacare, it's even worse. And then somewhere along the way saying, oh, now you have to provide retirement. Like, retirement? We make widgets. What do you mean retirement?
Which means what? They have to go hire somebody for
so now they go hire somebody, and half of the dollars that should be going to being what they're good at, which is the widget making, are instead spread out to have to make sure they file the forms properly so they don't miss the 5,500 reports, which are some of the things you have to do in 401k and pension forms, et cetera. And you got to file all this stuff, and you go, well, wait a second. Can't I just make widgets? Can't I just operate my liquor store? It's just a small company. I have three stores. Or can't I just run my radio station? Or can't I just run my, I'm a carpenter. I run a couple of crews. Tough luck. Suddenly what happened is you as the employee felt that freedom was not as valuable as safety. Now that's fine. You want safety. Russia had safety. China has safety. You want that. That's what you get. But you can't have freedom. Freedom or equality? What do you want? Freedom means you can fail. Freedom means you can make mistakes and lose it all. That's right. Yep. So don't take as much chances. You're not going to get as much. Don't spend as much. What do you want? Freedom? Or do you want a guarantee? Guarantee is no problem, but lots of people had guarantees. Indentured servitude, right? You gave up your freedom so that they would pay for food, shelter, clothing, and even healthcare, right? Because if you were an indentured servant and you came across on a ship and you broke your leg, do you think that guy who's still trying to collect his money from you through your effort, through your work, do you think that person would just let you sit there with a broken leg? No, they heal you up. You're not going to get, Mayo Clinic healthcare or Cedars-Sinai.
But you're their investment.
Yeah,
they need to take care of you.
You may not, but that you may not get Holy Cross healthcare, but what you are going to get is a way to get back on your feet, so you can go back and work for them. Right? So be very careful what you give up. We as a society may have decided we are going to give up our freedom. We used to be a free country. Today we are deciding we are not going to be. If that's your decision and enough people decide it, but Arif, it's much more complicated. The worker has a responsibility. The owner has a responsibility because they make money. You know what? There is a responsibility to make the best widget they can and to stay employed so that you have a job. And you can take your money and do good things with it, spend it all, blow it at the saloons in the old days, or save it. Buy property, buy investments, buy annuities, buy who knows. It's your family's future. I want you to be in control of that. And be very careful when you give up this stuff in this pension. Stay informed. It's your money. Thanks for listening. I'm Arif Halaby. This is Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. That's Jeff Gerard on AM 1220 KHTS. Go to hometownstation.com and click on Total Financial. Thanks for listening.